Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Founders League Round 3 today with the touring cars and as well with Tim Ireland alongside me.
Hello. Good to be back again, Lino.
I mean, it's pretty typical at this stage, isn't it? At some point it was special, but nowadays...
Sorry, shall I go away?
No. But yeah, round 3, as said, with the touring cars. So we have the Hyundai Elantra and the Audi RS3 battling it out across this 25-kilometer hell of a track. And it will be fairly interesting because those are probably one of the most unique cars we have in the game alongside maybe the Mission R, I'd say. I don't know, what would you think about that?
Yeah, maybe the Praga as well, just because, I don't know, I find the Praga a bit unique. Some people don't. Is it a baby LMDH car? Isn't it? I don't know.
But I mean, those are nonetheless our only front-wheel drive engine cars we have so far. So they behave very different. We will probably see that in action. They also don't have ABS, so on a track like this, bumpy in some braking zones, it's also a very difficult challenge for some of the drivers, of course.
Yeah, it's very different from what they've done so far. So it's going to be make for some interesting moments, I think.
You can already see a bit of understeer for Dominic Ladler, who are right now on board with in qualifying. This is also the, let's say, last normal race of Season 1. We have one more to go after this one, and we've teased it a couple of times and talked about it throughout the season. But today we will also reveal what it is, but this will be a bit later in the stream. So we now go through, I don't know...
Still teasing.
Still teasing. We keep on teasing. But there you see, also this time qualifying has been fixed to just invalidate, to not invalidate the lap and give you a slowdown instead, so that the drivers have a good shot at actually putting down a lap time. Dominic Ladler being hunted down by one of the other Hyundais, Enrico Bräuniger being in this train. And this race will also be very interesting in the grander scheme of the championship, because if we take a look at the championship after the last race, we see that Maximilian Dehn, who has of course won both races, is in front of Joachim Thunder, and they're both not here today.
Yeah, and it looks like Timothy Frisch has had some problems in qualifying and has had to go back to the pits. Although not as big an impact for the whole race, it does mean he's going to be starting near the back of the field. He's probably going to want to be making up some big points today because there's a few people after him not here today either, so he's got a chance to catch up.
It might actually be his chance to take the championship lead, if I see that correctly. Just need to double check on another thing. Because Dominic Ladler, I may have missed him in the championship. In 8th, you see Alizar here, who's unfortunately also not here today. That should be Dominic Ladler. So, that I need to get sorted out soon. But, yeah, he's currently in 8th in the championship. For him, of course, a good chance to catch up to the other people. But on the other hand, Timothy Frisch with a good points lead, 106 points in front of him.
Yeah, it's a good chance for Frisch to get a decent lead over Thunder going into the last round as well. So I'm sure he'll be wanting to take advantage of that.
Not sure which of the races he missed. Might have been the first one. I think he was with us in the GT4s, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
But of course, as said, in terms of the championship, a lot of stuff will change. And that will be very interesting to keep an eye on.
It's definitely going to mix things up a lot today, that's for sure. You can see from the qualifying, they seem to have a pretty decent handle on the cars. There's not been too many kind of mishaps going on. The pre-race practice was a bit hectic at times, but they seem to have kind of got the gist of it and are putting in some nice, consistent cornering and laying down a decent-looking lap.
I think Lunio might have a good shot today at victory, to be honest. Looking at his pace, car in behind him, that's Dominic Lally. He started the lap behind him.
Yeah, he's definitely been going pretty quick there. He did have a few exciting moments in practice. He was one of the ones I was watching, but he does seem to have got his eye in, which might be a British expression. And he seems to be doing okay now.
I mean, he has been very fast, of course, if you think back to Road Atlanta and the AMG and all those races, but this time he might have the best shot, of course, with the current king of the Nordschleife in the form of Maximilian Dehn not being present here today. And it seems like the front-wheel drive car is also something that fits very well to his driving style. I always recognized he had a fairly smooth driving style. It's not as aggressive as you need, for example, to be with some other cars, which is also probably why the AMG was so good for him. So
there's going to be a lot of unknowns today, though. Obviously, we don't have a lot of touring car racing in the public servers right now, and definitely not of the 60-minute variety, and definitely not around the Nordschleife.
Here we go through Tiergarten and Hohenrhein. Let's see what this lap will be for the Frenchman. This also gives us plenty of opportunities to butcher his name. We'll try our best not to do so. And it's 6 seconds faster than Dominic Ladler. Häusler and Bräuninger coming in. I mean, 6 seconds on the Nordschleife in those cars, it's not the world.
No, it's definitely not as big as 6 seconds would be around Orchard Road, but it's still a fairly impressive lead. The rest of the field is a lot more bunched up than, so he's definitely got a decent lead off the front there. And he'll be looking forward to extend it, no doubt.
Will be very interesting to have an eye on, indeed. We're now getting ready for the race, and I've brought up the current schedule for this league. And as you can see, we are in round 3. Round 4, we haven't set the minute length about. And, I mean, there aren't really that many options when it's come to a longer Nordschleife race with GT3s. You know it, but yeah, of course, it will be a 2.4 hour race. We had one in spring at Spa. It was very exciting. We had 2 of the mouse drivers join in there, actually. And this time it will be at the Nordschleife. And we are very much looking forward to it. But now we are also looking forward to the race, as we can hear the engines rev up to life. And Adrian Lunion just said in the Discord channel as well that he actually didn't want to start first, which is very interesting.
There can be a certain amount of anxiety about starting first at the Nürburgring either layout because of the turn 1.
I mean, he has Dominic Lala alongside him as well. And we go racing for the third time in the RENNSPORT Founders League, and it's a good getaway for Lunio as well. Kolbeck also back in the race. He had some issues in qualifying. But it seems like Lunio can keep the lead into turn 1. It's a bit bunched up behind.
That was an amazing dive by the Audi there.
I think that might be Dennis Kurzer.
I think it was Dennis Kurzer, yeah.
Very good start for him. Oh, and maybe commentator's curse there. I think he might have not really calculated with that lift of oversteer. That's also a characteristic those cars have that you need to get used to.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it a few times during the cast, but it's definitely a different driving experience.
It will be very interesting to see what Dominic Lalla can do to stop Lunio, if he can do something to stop Lunio to begin with.
Yeah, he seems to have got a bit of a lead at the beginning. There's a tiny gap back to Ladler, then a bit of a bigger gap back to a bunch of the Frisch Hausler Bollinger fight going on.
You really don't like those letters, do you?
No, I don't know. I can just do them phonetic English if you want.
I don't think that will work as well. Oh, but Timothy Fridge onto the curbing. Oh, and hard into the wall. That's not how you want your start of the green hair to be.
Well, he didn't want to be first at the beginning, and now he isn't, so wish granted.
But it's Häusler against Bräuninger for third position at the moment. But of course we are on the first out of presumably 7 laps.
There's a definite Elantra dominance going on here. I think Hyundai will be pleased.
I mean, especially on this track, you really feel the difference in those cars. So like, I think the Audi is a bit more powerful, but therefore a bit more unstable in certain situations. I think it's also a bit wider and longer.
I'll admit, I think I've only ever driven the Elantra. I don't know why. I just picked it and drove it. I don't know if I've ever actually driven the Audi.
Well, I've driven both, and they are definitely different. I mean, of course, you can't. There is a certain bias in my personal position towards the German manufacturer of the 4 wings, but the Elantra does drive very good around curvy sections. The Audi is a bit more rough going through there, so it needs a bit more manpower to handle it, let's say. But overall, you can get the same, as it's usual, you can get the same pace out of both cars, just what you prefer. But of course, it seems like the Elantra is working very well for Adrian Lunio and also for the 4 trailing cars.
Yeah, it's spaced out a little bit again. Timothy Frisch, as you can see, is back on track and making his way forward. I think he might have had another little off a second ago, though.
He's now being hunted down by Dennis Kurzer.
We've mentioned before in the other classes about tyres getting hot, and when you've got a front engine, front wheel drive car, funnily enough, the tyres can get pretty warm.
And the rear wheel tyres are definitely not heating up.
No, definitely not. So I think anybody who can keep their tyres in fairly good condition is going to be at an advantage here, because if you realise your tyres are bad, you've got a long way to go before you can change them.
Yeah, and flat spots will be a big part as well. I mean, those are the first cars we drive around here without ABS.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone who's tried the hypercars will be familiar with flat spotting in RENNSPORT. And yeah, for sure, these guys are going to be getting a taste of it as well, I would think.
If you decide to keep the tires on after 60 minutes of driving, you'll, no matter how good you are, probably feel a bit of that. I think in real life, if you drive TCRs in an endurance spec series, same goes for the Porsche Cup car, by the way, you do have to have ABS on the car. Not sure what the exact length of the race must be for this to be the case. I think with the Porsche cars, it's up to 60 minutes you can drive without ABS. And everything past that, you need to have ABS on that.
Okay, oh, that makes sense.
And same should be for the front-wheel drive cars. I do know for a fact that at the 24 hours of Nordschleife, they do have ABS on those cars. It would be a bit, let's say, a bit of an extra challenge to run it without ABS at all.
Yeah, the 24 hours without any ABS on one of these cars, that's an extra level of concentration you need, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's also easy. We know the changing conditions over there or in here. Yeah, I think if you are surprised by rain, you also don't want to be surprised by a sunny lockup. But Lunio already 4 seconds up on Dominik Ladler.
Yeah, he seems to be kind of just slowly getting the gap bigger and bigger. He's not doing anything. He's not taking any risks, I don't think. He seems to be kind of well in control of the car, and he's just slowly building the gap, which is probably the sensible way to do it.
Just having a look at the standings, which you can also always have a look at, as well as live timings on the RENNSPORT app. I really love that feature. But you can also check live timings, standings, track position, and all that kind of stuff in the app. But you can also take a look at the league standings. And Lunio hasn't run a race so far. We knew that in this series. So this will be his first points. And a victory with this kind of grid will probably also yield around 120, 100 points, something like that. And it should put him into a good position to get into the top 12 in points. So for the final race, should he attend it, can make up a lot of ground if he performs well there. And we know that he's a strong performer.
Yeah, you can put a bit of extra icing on the cake for the last round for him. Maybe push him a little harder, which is always good for us watching.
I mean, we've talked earlier about it. Dominik Ladler now on 120 points. He can get at least equal on points or super close to Joachim Thunder. And we've seen fights between the two of them in the past. Very respectful drivers.
Yeah, definitely. I know that they've been doing a bit of racing each other in some of the public races as well, so they're well versed in each other's tricks, and it makes for some interesting racing on track.
And this man, Timothy Frisch, we've seen him a lot of times now. We know him very well. He's a very consistent finisher. Might not have those shiny wins and stuff, but he has always collected good points. And that shows because he can get close to Maximilian Dehn, and he's actually the only driver in the grid today who can get close to Maximilian Dehn. He now goes a bit right in turn 1, but that's... Can do that once in a while, but you shouldn't do it too often.
I think hopefully with the last round being set up how it is, we might get a few extra wildcard entries as well. I know there are some very quick guys out there who have the Founders Pack, and it'd be nice to see a packed grid for the last round, and maybe a few more challenges for Maximilian Dean to contend with.
I mean, you've seen who has joined the... I'm not sure. I think you called them pub races.
Yeah.
Of course, short for public, but there's also a different meaning for pub, which I thought at first you meant that. Which I found hilarious. Even though it is kind of fitting name, so...
But yeah, there have been a few more famous, shall we say, names cropping up in some of the public races recently.
And also RENNSPORT community event winner. Not to forget that. They may have been performed in ESL1, but more crucially, one of them has won the SPA 2.4 hour race. Which is of course, much more important thing in...
It maybe doesn't give as much dollar value attached, but I think for pure prestige, it's the winner.
Oh, Lala going a bit wide there through Blue Blood's big impact with the wall. It's Eric Häusler going by. Luckily for him, there's right now not damage enabled in this event.
Yeah, that would have been a bit of a race-ending move if damage was turned on.
I mean, if you've seen the big challenge of this racetrack, you just got off the track ever so slightly, and especially in those front-wheel drive vehicles. Without ABS, what you're gonna do when you're on the grass? You can't brake, you can't steer. Because anything will just throw you off. Just have to lift off, keep your turn-in radius the same, and hope, basically.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of runoff area anywhere really on the Nordschleife, so it's, especially with the TCRs, which they're probably not as used to as some of the other cars they've been driving here. They're probably all thankful damage is turned off this week.
Indeed, I mean, we have also seen another quirk of those cars, which is actually super funny to see in real life as well. When you hit certain curbs a bit too hard, these cars do go onto wheels because they are this stiffly sprung. I'm sure some of you have seen the clips at, for example, Red Bull Ring, where some of the TCRs kind of two-wheeled it through the turns.
It's always a fairly prevalent thing to be happening in the British touring car as well, so yeah, it's definitely a quirk of the cars. And it's always nice to see it in a sim.
I mean, you definitely know the driver is going to the limit, if you see that being the case. I wonder what exactly happening is to Dennis Kurze, because he had a super strong start, and in between he also had super good pace, but you just can't seem to string it together in terms of consistency.
Yeah, I think he was a bit of a victim of the tyre overheating and maybe pushing a bit too soon after his tyres had been hot and not letting them cool down enough. So he seems to have been okay now. He seems to be getting back into the swing of things. He's got a fairly big gap to Timothy Frisch to make up, but he has got 45 minutes to do it, so we'll see.
Meanwhile, Pierre Kolberg unfortunately had to park it in the pits again. Also confirmation in the Twitch chat there from him. We'll try to figure that out, try to resolve the issue.
The dreaded technical issues can be the bane of sim racing, but at least you don't have to worry about your car falling apart.
You know, do I see it correct that Dominic Lala has a 5-second time penalty to serve?
Yeah, he does seem to have one already, which I'm surprised about, to be honest. He must have been doing a lot of corner cutting.
Or maybe one of a bigger cut, let's say. But so far nothing is stopping this man. Of course, also the jump in Pflanzgarten is such a different challenge in those cars.
Yeah, there's always a bit of tire slippage when you hit the ground, and when you haven't got ABS, it can be a pretty sketchy moment.
Yeah, especially if you hit the brakes ever so slightly too early. Therefore, hitting the ground with locked tires, it's not fun. Meanwhile, hello to all the people in the chat now. It's very nice to see some action there.
Whoa, that was a pretty sketchy moment there. Car was bouncing all over the place.
I mean, there are so many good quotes about TCRs and how you have to drive them. But to put it simply, you have to be quite mental to put a TCR car to the limit.
Yeah. Yeah, with all of the weight being at the front and the steering, and everything, then you need to really kind of lay on into the corners and try and swing the back end round, and it can be an unnerving experience. Those poor front tires have got a lot of work to do.
I feel like Dominic Lala is closing in on Enrico Bräuninger though. Slowly but surely.
Yeah, I think the gap is closing. It's currently sitting at just over 3 seconds.
I think we should see the people come into the pits as well this lap.
Yeah, fuel is going to be another issue that they've probably not had to deal with in the touring cars, so I hope they're all going to play it safe. And definitely make sure they've got enough fuel before they come into the pits. As heartwarming as it is to see someone getting pushed over the finish line, I'm sure they'd rather just go into the pits.
Don't want to see that too often, just like this incident for Timothy Fritsch here in turn 1. Something must have happened to Dennis Kutz as well, because he was stationary on the start-finish line. Luckily he's still driving, but not quite sure what this was. Parked to the far right.
You can get in an interesting dilemma with the touring cars where you want to get on the power coming out of the corners, but as soon as you do, it just asks a bit too much of the front tyres and you start understeering, which I think is what just happened to Timothy Frisch there. But the impatient racing driver in you always wants to start getting on the power as soon as possible.
I mean, you basically have to do trail braking just in reverse. So to get that into your head when you're usually used to rear-wheel drive cars, that's a bit of an ask. So.
Especially for the people who mostly used to GT3 cars or other cars with traction control. You get a bit lead-footed with your right foot, and you get very used to just kind of planting it on the throttle and letting the computer do the work. And you very much got to kind of feel it out with these cars as you're accelerating out corners.
And yet I think it's always a good choice to drive TCRs before jumping into GT3s or alike, because you can learn so much about throttle and brake that you will use for GT3s subconsciously and actually gain a lot of time from. Because of course you have traction control, you have ABS in those cars, but if you just rely on those systems, you will never be able to really unleash the pace you could unleash if you know how to drive without them as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They're useful for what they are for endurance cars. So I mean, you've got a bit extra brain power for other things, and especially while your concentration's waning. But yeah, there are few times where relying on the electronics is faster.
And also in terms of consistency, it's also a big part.
And even with things like ABS, you're still skidding. You're just skidding very small amounts, and it's never good for your tires to be into that kind of ABS zone all of the time.
I mean, it's also, I think, a very widely spread or known fact that you can, in theory, brake better without ABS than with ABS. Even though that is, of course, you need to master that, therefore. So having ABS is very good, of course, but if you know how to trail brake and if you know how to really feel the grip of the tires during braking, you can unleash a lot more performance, because all that ABS does is basically loosening the brake. So, of course, when it loosens the brake, you don't brake, you don't slow down.
Yeah.
So you want to avoid that as much as possible as well.
Yeah, when you've got the cars with ABS, you're definitely trying to get as close to the ABS activating as you can without it activating. And it gives you a bit of a safety net compared to something like these cars, where you don't have it to activate and save you. You just end up going straight on.
I mean, there are so many fun quirks to those cars as well that you can make use of, which are specific to those cars. So you don't only learn stuff for other cars to use, but those cars in specific have such a high skill level, skill ceiling. But funnily enough, I think they are pretty good entry cars as well, since with front-wheel drive, all you have to do to avoid spinning is stomp on the throttle.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely one of the kind of easy to learn, difficult to master cars.
I mean, those cars you can do like stuff like getting on the throttle while braking to loosen up the front axle. So once you lock up, that you don't lock up anymore.
Yeah.
Of course, lift off oversteer is something that can cost you a race, but can also gain you a lot of time. I may have lost a 2-hour race at Bathurst the last time going down to the chase because of lift off oversteer.
No.
It was painful. The thing is, I was super tight on fuel, you know, and I needed to save on the last lap a bit of fuel, and therefore I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna lift on the chase. I had like I don't know, a minute or a minute and a half to the car behind me, so nothing to worry about. And I thought like, okay, I'm gonna use the long straights.
Yeah.
So I coasted, and you turn into the chase, into the fast right-hander, you know?
Yeah.
For 2 hours at max speed, full throttle. And this time you don't have any throttle applied. You turn in.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course the rear is just gonna come round and hit the wall with, well, the front first on the right-hand side of the track. And engine was gone.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking thing, but at least you're not in a real car when you're doing it.
That would have been a bit worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what I did wrong, so I wasn't really I'm rarely ever upset about something like this. I was just like, it's kind of stupid.
I can't regale you with any tales of stupid things I've done while leading races, because that would require me to be leading races to begin
I wasn't leading a race, but I was still, I think, P3 or something in my split, which was quite good.
That's pretty good.
It was a very fun combination. It was Bathurst with TCRs and the M2... What version did they have? I'm not sure. One of the M135i, I think it was.
Oh, right,
235i,
okay.
that one, was it? In race from back then. Many years ago at this stage already. It's kind of crazy to think about how long that was ago. It must have been 2021, so 3 years ago. Of course, some people will just shake their head and go like, I raced 7 years or 8 years ago in my prime. But time flies. And now Adrian Lugnot, he should come into the pits, and so he does. Of course, you also have to watch out to not get a drive-through.
Nuno is changing tyres as his Hausler.
Will be interesting what Ladler does now. He's 20 seconds behind. That would mean he would come out when he serves his penalty now, which I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
2 seconds in front.
Yeah, it's true. We might do. And if he can get track position and hold it, that would be impressive.
He's not served his penalty, did he?
I don't know if the message disappears after you've finished the pit lane.
I haven't seen him stop for 5 seconds. I think he only went in to refuel.
He's maybe opting to leave it till the end of the race and see what he can make of what he's got.
I mean, track position is super crucial on the Nordschleife.
And he has come out over 6 seconds ahead of Lugnot. So who probably won't know that he's got a 5-second penalty.
I'm sure he knows, but he also knows how crucial track position and the distance he now has to the Frenchman hunting him down, how valuable that really is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing you've seen in Formula 1, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's fun to see people doing different strategies and messing around with things like that. I always find it entertaining. Ladler seems to be the only one who hasn't swapped tires. He's the only one braving it right now.
But he already lost 1.5 seconds to Lugnot.
Yeah.
But look at the gap from P3 to P4. Eric Häusler and Enrico Bräuninger, they were, well, toe-to-toe in the early 2 laps, and now...
Yeah, that gap opened up.
Let's get on board with Adrian Lunio here.
You'll probably get their little peak of Ladler ahead of them every now and again through this twistier section. But he'll definitely have an eyeful of Ladler's Elantra when it comes to the straights.
I mean, you can visually see how grippy the new tires are on this car.
Yeah. Suppose the interesting bit will be how difficult can Ladler make it for him to overtake.
And if you can maybe force him into a mistake, but I think they're both calm enough to not do anything stupid here.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have thought what kind of like a perfect situation for Ladler would be now would be that if they start fighting and Hausler catches up, so it brings like a third car into the mix. Hausler's got a fair gap between him and Nuno right now, so he would have to, Ladler would have to hold him up for quite a while.
I mean, on the other hand, he has the thing, does he really want to lose time to Lunio now? Because he has 4 laps ahead of him, or 3.5 laps ahead of him.
Yeah, true.
Will he be able to keep him behind? I mean, we still have the Dittinger Höhe to go. It's pretty much a free pass at this distance.
Yeah, true. You'd have to do some super blocking for that to happen.
For him, ideally, Lunio would have a big locker, but I don't think we will see that with him. He's too cold-headed for that, let's say like that. But now, Ladler blocks him off there. You don't want to go side by side through this part of the track.
Nuno skipping across the curb there.
If you have, let's say, a bit of a hot-headed driver in behind you, or someone you know that is gonna take risks, you can kind of force him into overestimating himself in some situations, therefore locking up big time. And basically the tire advantage that this person had is gone.
Yeah, true.
Don't come back from a big flat spot that easily. But Lunio, I think he knows that he has the upper hand on Ladler in this case. He's pushing him around the track, metaphorically, and he's definitely showing himself, but he's not going for anything outrageous here.
Yeah, he's not trying anything overly aggressive, and Ladler's definitely having a good show of making sure he stays behind for now. The gap to Hausler has gone down by 2 seconds since these two started fighting, so I wonder if Ladler's got one eye on that or not.
Sure, right now his eyes are on the road and in his mirrors. Must be a bit frustrating being in the Elantra with the number 2 at the moment. Because you can see that Lunio is faster than Ladler. But you just can't find a way past. You just can't force your way through on an experienced driver like Ladler.
Yeah, it's the difficult thing with the Nordschleife is there's kind of realistically not that many overtaking places, especially, and if the other guy, or the guy you're trying to overtake isn't like a lot slower than you, then it's quite easy for them to cover most of the overtaking opportunities.
And what you could see, yeah.
No, I was just going to say it's just part of the challenge of the track.
I mean, what you could see there in HyperX and some other corners as well, that Lunio is diving into the inside to kind of force Ladler to go wide, to find a way to slip through the inside. And it does work on less experienced drivers usually. not to degrade them or anything, but you are kind of intimidated at some stage when you have a car with this much pace advantage in your mirrors. But on a Dominic Ladler who knows the track, who knows the car, and who especially knows you as a driver, that ain't gonna work it. I mean, I'm sure that Ladler knows that Lunio's not just gonna dive it down the inside and take them both out of the race.
Yeah, there's definitely like some trust and respect between the two drivers here. And you can see the way Lunio's battling and the way Ladler isn't just backing off and letting him through. They trust each other to not do anything stupid, which is always great to see in some online racing.
Lunio had a good run there through the small carousel, but Ladler was just a bit higher in the turn, but not quite high enough that he could slip through.
Well, as you can see now, Hausler is only 4 seconds back, so he's going to get to watch him all the way down the dotting over.
Now the slipstream kicks into effect, but I think with those cars with the gear limit, this could be very interesting as well. Out of the slipstream, Lunio goes. It's not a slam dunk as with the GT3s.
He might not have the pace to get fully past, but it is going to force Ladler to take an outside line here.
But they're side by side now into Tiergarten, and Ladler backs out of it, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Now Lunio needs a good exit though. Two turns and already 7/10 between the two cars.
Yeah, where he decided to back out, he was never going to stay like directly on Lunio's bumper. So if he wants to continue the battle, he's going to have to make a pretty swift comeback. Or is he going to sit behind Lunio and maybe try and learn a bit more about how he was driving?
I mean, especially on those cars, you can really see how the car in front of you behaves and therefore know what the driver's doing. Because, of course, whatever you do, the tail is just waggling. But, of course, due to their battle as well, Eric Häusler only 3 seconds behind Dominic Ladler now.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering whether Ladler's going to just let Lunio do his thing now and maybe try and pick up a few tips and use the slipstream as much as he can and maybe try and extend that gap out a little bit more.
I mean, what we now know is that slipstream isn't the key factor to getting past in those cars. Even on a straight, as long as the Dottinger, he had the best slingshot he could have had, Adrian Lunio, but it was really the inside turn at Antonius Bucher that pushed Adrian through, because I think if Dominic Ladler still had a bit of overlap on the front end of the pack, basically, so if his front axle was ahead of Lunio's, I think he would have gone for it.
Yeah, I think he would have done too. But like you were saying before, on the Dottinger, you do start hitting that rev limiter, so it kind of reduces the effectiveness of the slipstream. Whereas maybe at other points on the track where you're not banging off the limiter in sixth, you could maybe use the slipstream to a bit more of effect. But also completely invalidating my argument. You have the problem that Lunio had trying to get past Ladler.
I mean, the main problem is you can get super close to the car in front in the slipstream, because even if you have rev limiter, if you're on the slipstream, you gain speed.
Yes.
But once you get out of that slipstream, it's like hitting a brick wall. You lose all the momentum if you don't have the power to make up for that. Slunio gets kind of loose here through Schwedenkreuz.
Yeah, coming up behind a car, the air's thinner, so it takes less power to push you forward. So even though you're on the rev limiter, you can get a little bit quicker. But obviously, as soon as you pull out into the thicker, normal air, it's like tapping the brakes.
And those cars really don't have any power to spare at this stage, going to 60 on the Dirtinger.
No.
With the GT3 you still have about 1000 RPM, something like that, to the rev limiter. By being at least somewhat close to your horsepower peak. Depending on the car, of course.
And the GT4s have a whole nother gear.
That's very true. Depending on the GT4, but in this case, ours do. I think I've never used 7th gear in the BMW so far.
I only have just to say I have.
Well, I mean, use in really use it.
Yeah.
Not, of course, I shifted into 7th at some stage, but I haven't really made use of it. I think if you have a very good show through the Dirtinger, you might as well go 7th, but I think Camel Straight is a bit too short for it.
Yeah.
But maybe Remco can tell us a bit more about it. He's the expert on that car.
Maybe at some future stage when setups become a little bit more open, then 7th gear will become more useful down the Dottinger.
Maybe at the Daytona Oval.
Or the Daytona Oval.
It would be a very interesting experience, I think.
I think we need more. There needs to be more of a push for the Daytona Oval. I think there could be some really interesting racing coming out of that. I know a lot of, especially GT race fans, maybe F1 fans, like to do the oval racing dirty, but anyone who's tried it out before on a sim, it can be a lot of fun, and it's a very different experience.
I remember when we, also back in the race room days, we tried to hit the maximum speed possible. That was a fun experience. We had, I think, 3 or 4 people with 2 drafting and 1 bump drafting, basically. One car. Okay. That was very interesting, very sketchy, but can kill 1 or 2 hours at least. But now Eric Häusler, right on the back bumper of Dominik Ladler, and Dominik Ladler will probably think to himself, didn't I have somebody this close to me just a lap before?
Well, he's now just got experience at blocking. He's ahead of the curve.
Häusler trying pretty much the same thing as Lunio tried. Just stick it down the inside to hope that Ladler will leave some space open for him to slip through, but still no chance there.
It can be a risky game as well, making moves like that. I mean, obviously, most of the people racing here know Dominik Ladler and know what he's like. But just showing your nose to people who you don't know so well, especially in these cars with the lift-off oversteer, with the lack of ABS, it doesn't take much of a change of inputs for something funky to happen. And that's not normally what you want to risk.
I mean, Häusler does have to be in a certain distance to Dominic Lala if he wants to get by as easy as Lunio did at the end of Döttinger Höhe. And he has an amazing small carousel. That was purely amazing.
That was really nice. He's probably going to have to ease off a little bit before the Döttinger Höhe because he's so close behind Dominic Ladler, but he should just drop back a bit and use as much of that slipstream as he can.
And he's struggling to get close. Probably now dip out of the slipstream. I don't think he'll be able to get past.
I don't think he's going to get enough of an overlap to phase Ladler at the end here.
It's interesting that Lala again shows the outside line. They nearly touch. Lala has backed off of it, I think, but...
Yeah, he did. He breaks a little bit earlier.
Häusler doesn't have the comfort of 7/10.
No, Dominic Ladler's definitely closer behind here.
Does Dominic Lala get another shot at P2 here? Side by side down the start finish straight. It's amazing how many times they nearly touched in all of this.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
Setting himself up for a good one out of Yokohama as here. But I think he's too far away.
Yeah, if he's going to make a move, he's going to have to try and leave it till a bit later on in the lap, I think.
But also good defense there by Eric Häusler. He didn't let himself to be outbraked by himself. Just stuck it up the inside of the corner.
Yeah, he made it pretty clear from the beginning of the start-finish straight there that he was going the defensive line and he dared Ladler to do something about it.
Ladler tried, but I think the tires actually do make a big difference here.
Yeah.
Of course, unsure how it looks in terms of flat spot for Dominic Ladler on his car, but apart from that, you work those front wheel tires very hard during even the 3 laps we had at the start. Both in terms of tire wear and tire heat.
Looking at Ladler's onboard footage, it doesn't seem to be having this much bumping around in his steering wheel, which I know I get when I've got flat spots. You can definitely tell from the onboard footage. So he does seem to have done a pretty good job of keeping his tyres in good shape.
You know, we welcome this Eric to the stream as well. Oh, I just misread, I think. Enriched uranium. This enriched uranium. Oh, that's correct. That was a very good showcase of the ref limiter in the Audi from Dennis Kurzer. But you do hit the ref limiter in the Audi quite early. As said, it is the more powerful out of the 2 cars. I'm curious to see where Timothy Fridge ends up after this race. He's currently in 5th.
Yeah, it's not the haul of points I'm sure he was hoping for, but with neither of his close competitors taking part, he's going to make some kind of gains on them. For sure. So I'm sure he'll be pleased with that either way.
Meanwhile, Eric Häusler wasn't really able to get as far away from Dominik Ladler as Lunio did the lap before, but still 3 seconds between the two cars.
Yeah, he's not pulling away at Lunio's speeds, but he's gapped Ladler enough that I think he can at least take a bit of a breath and collect his thoughts.
Meanwhile, I think it might have been during the pit stops. 20:45 o'clock. Adrian Lunio said he was dead after 3 laps of driving this car. And he still has, after this one more to do.
Yeah, he's not quite got enough time to slow it down and try and make it this the last lap. He's not got that much of a buffer, so he's just gonna have to dig deep and go for it for one more lap.
I mean, it's only 5 seconds to Eric Häusler. It's not much at all. Meanwhile, Enrico Bräuniger in 4th. He's just quietly driving his laps, of course. Gap to Timothy Fritz is still about 7 to 8 seconds. It has been like that for quite some time. Could be some good points for him. I mean, if we take another look at the standings currently, see that he's currently in 13th place, so he will also move up the grid quite significantly.
Dean's still going to be going into the last round with a comfortable lead, I think. So, and he has been pretty dominant at the ring so far.
That is very
the
much
longer race throws up challenges. You never know.
And you can never predict what's gonna happen. We've seen some very unusual mistakes from some drivers where we thought they can't lose it here, or where you couldn't really anticipate it.
Very true.
So it's not a safe call to call Maximilian Dean the Founders League Season 1 champion. Even though the gap to Dominik Ladler, to Joachim Thunder, to Tim Schroeder is fairly significant. Ali Zaya as well, who's currently in 4th. But I mean, if Timothy Fritz should have his usual good performance in 2 weeks, and Maximilian Dehn, for whatever reason, can't perform, if he is there, but I'm fairly sure he will join. He will not let himself lose out on the opportunity on 2.4 Nordschleife race. Then it will be very interesting, points-wise.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to get your calculator out for the next round. I think there's going to be a lot of trying to figure out what's going on with the points and how it's affecting how it's affected by the current standings. Because I'm not doing it.
Well, I mean, one of the good things about our point system is that depending on the turnout and the grid you are facing as a driver, you get a fair number of points. So that if you have a very strong field with good drivers, you get more points for finishing third than finishing third in a race with 4 drivers.
Yeah, Yeah, it does take into account the strength of the field you're racing against, and your position. So if we got a particularly strong field in the next race, then somebody like Timothy Fresh, who is consistent and throws down some good results, he might even get more points from one of those than he would from a second or a third race today.
Yeah, but one of the negatives of those systems is that we can't really say how many points one will get exactly. We can estimate it roundabout. We know that a win is usually worth around 120 points. 150-ish on a very good grid.
Yeah, it does make the theory crafting for us and for the drivers before races a bit trickier. You've really just got to drive the race you've been handed and hope for the best at the end of it.
The gap between Lunio and Häusler, meanwhile, up front, has come down by a couple of tenths. Just want to give a quick mention that, of course, 4.8 seconds. It's not much. It's not... Well, it's still 4.8 seconds. So it's... You know, it's not a small gap, but it's also not a big gap. Especially around the Nordschleife, but...
Oh yeah, it's a gap that can definitely disappear if you make a mistake. So, although Lunio can relax to a degree, he definitely can't let his mind wander too much.
But he definitely knows how it behaves on the Döttinger with those cars now, so does Häusler.
Yep.
Gap between Browning and Fridge is also down to 3 seconds. For Fridge, this would of course be very crucial to make up some more points to Maximilian Dehn.
Yeah, the last lap round, Broiling is some Broing.
Close enough.
Yeah, fair enough. He seemed to have quite a slow lap last lap. Timothy Frisch was a lot faster than he was. It was uncharacteristically slow, so I'm assuming he had some kind of incident.
It seems like that incident is kind of throwing him off his pace. Gap has come down to 2 seconds. Meanwhile, Häusler had a terrible exit out of Hatzenbach and lost the second to Lunio. Got stuck on the grass there on the outside.
And with Fritsch catching, he's now starting to get sight of the car ahead of him, so that's always spurs you on a little bit more, gives you a bit more of an incentive to push.
Definitely gives you a target to hit. Oh, but they can see, or rather hear, that he had a bit of airtime there. Suddenly the engine bogging down when you land while having the brake on. It's not the most comfortable feeling.
Definitely not. Timothy Frisch done his fastest Sector 1 and Sector 2 in this lap, so he's definitely pushing. And it's paying off because the gap has come down to under a second now.
I have a guess who has the fastest sectors.
I would take the stab at Lunio.
Would also be my guess.
He has got the best lap by 2 seconds, so
Well, that's
It's
not
probably
much on the Nordschleife, as said previously.
no.
You need to remember this is a 9-minute lap. A usual lap time is about 130-ish. 130 to 145. Of course, you have tracks like Spa or Jeddah go closer to or past 2 minutes. You have tracks like Orchard Road and Road Atlanta, which have like 1 minute and 15, but typically 1 minute 30. So that's 6 times faster than this behemoth of a track. Oh, and big impact there for Enrico Breuninger.
Yeah, it just got on the grass into the braking zone. And like you were saying before, once that happens, you're kind of a passenger.
I mean, we can only repeat ourselves. Luckily, there's no damage on. But what a hit with the wall that was.
It was a big hit. We got a good view of the underside of the car there.
I think it's probably the most violent impact you can have around the Nordschleife if you misjudge it in Metzgesfeld. Even though in real life you don't really see collisions there usually. But I mean, you pretty much head onto a wall around there.
Now, I don't know about you, but if I've ever in this position in an online race against people, I've been hunting someone down for a few laps and they have an incident. You have the two feelings of, yes, I'm passed, which is what you've been aiming to try and do.
And you are disappointed because, yeah, you fought your way to this driver and you didn't get to pass him really.
Yeah, you were looking forward to a battle and it never got to happen.
Yeah, exactly that. Even though you might also think, or what usually might also be the case, the person ahead of you gets nervous because you get closer this fast and therefore makes a mistake, so it's still your accolade.
Yeah,
to get that position.
You're putting them under pressure and it caused a mistake, which can happen, but I do like fighting people on track. So I'm always a bit like, oh, I was looking forward to that.
I think what Lunio is looking forward to is the checkered flag, and he's not far away. But the gap between him and Häusler, 4.5 seconds. If Häusler didn't have that mistake out of Hatzenbach, could have been fairly close in the end, I think.
It's just one more engine torture session to go.
It was a very strong performance from Adrian Lunio throughout the race. I can't recall a single mistake he made.
No, he's been very good. He's been consistent. He's not been under super amounts of pressure, except for the time earlier on with Dominic Ladler. But even then, he seemed composed, and it's a well-deserved victory for him.
He becomes our second winner in the RENNSPORT Founders League. Good points for Lunio here to set him up for the 2.4-hour race. We hope to see him back there. But also Eric Häusler, only 4.3 seconds behind Lunio. He has had a very good race as well. Can't deny that.
Yeah, it was hit or miss with Dominic Ladler's wildcard strategy with the tyres, but yeah, it was a very good race for second place.
I mean, it did help him, I think, because it really put a big halter to Adrian Lunio's pace. throughout
Yeah.
pretty much a whole lap. Dominic Ladler in third. Good result. I think he can be happy with that, with all his struggles he had at times.
Same with this man, Timothy Frisch here, coming down the Dottinger Hill. I'm sure he'll be fairly happy with his 4th place.
I mean, he struggled very badly in the opening stint, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, but he's made a brilliant comeback.
And should be, if my rough estimations are correct, P2 in the overall standings.
Nice.
Only one who's a bit further behind, Dennis Kurzer. Very unfortunate race for him, I think. He had a good start, a good pace at the start of the race. And just couldn't string it together afterwards with that mistake. In the Ford curve as well.
Yeah, he's definitely been struggling with the Audi today. But you can't help but give him some accolades for sticking with it and staying in the race.
It's still good points for his name, so it's still valuable for the championship.
It's always a little disheartening when you're that far off the pace like he has been. But yeah, he's stayed there. He's thought of the longer goal, collected points.
Can also see how much the rear of the car is jumping around.
I actually really like the sound of the Audi from the external cameras.
I also really do like it. I mean, it will sound a bit less cool in the ref limiter, because ref limiter is always a bit eardrum shattering in those TCR cars. But that's not because the sound is better or anything, that's more rather because it's kind of accurate to how it is in real life.
Yeah. But I think it's got a really good kind of really whiny but throaty sound that TCR cars do have. And the pops and crackles from the exhaust always add a bit of flavour.
Let's see what kind of speeds we can hit here. On board with Dennis Kurzer and the Audi RS3 TCR.
Interesting to see how different it is from the Hyundai down here.
257 is already without slipstream.
Yeah.
Of course, joined with this lovely ref limiter sound. But one final time a heartbreaking zone. And you can see he's actually able to really throw it into the turns, but once he can improve the consistency, I think he will also be a name to reckon with in future races.
Yeah, he's definitely learned a lot as the race has gone on, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more from him.
But yeah, this was race number 3 in the Founders League. We will quickly wait until we see the new standings. But until the standings updated, we can show you what's in for the final race in 2 weeks. We talked about it earlier, but here's a quick trailer to show you. Until then, we see you in roughly 2 minutes. Yeah, as said, it will be a 2.4-hour race. So the second one we have had in RENNSPORT, or will have in RENNSPORT. And meanwhile, the standings are updated. And we might as well show it to you in-game, because you can check all of this in your game as well as in the app, of course. Just a second. There we go. There we have the standings. And as you can see, Maximilian Dehn still leading on 315 points, but Timothy Fritsch with his result on 313 points. And Joachim Thunder and Dominik Ladler equal on 229.
So that's almost equal first, equal second, well, equal third. But yeah, it's come out pretty close towards the end there with one round to go, and it's a big one in more ways than one.
I mean, it's even closer and behind if you take a look at it. Bräuninger and Lunio, our race winner and race P2, equal on 153.
Yeah. Bezier on 152.
I mean, Tim Schreider is also still within a good reach of maybe the top 5, with a bit of luck even the podium, even though that will be a bit harder with Ladler and Thunder currently being in a fight for it. But
yeah, but it's possible. That's the main thing. Mathematically possible, could do a lot for your motivation.
That's indeed true, but all I know is that the final race in 2 weeks, the 2.4-hour Nordschleife race, will not only be a great event, but also a very interesting championship race. I think it might actually be the first of our official leagues that goes to the final round to be decided.
Yeah, I think it might be.
So I'm very excited for it. Of course, tomorrow we will have even more racing action with one of our fan favorite cars, and I think one of the more fan favorite tracks in terms of the Praga at Hockenheim.
And yeah, it's a good combo.
What do you think? Who will we see racing tomorrow?
I don't know. I'm not really sure how many. I mean, I really like the Praga. I've said this many times before, so I hope more people turn up for it. I think it'll be a fantastic race. I think Hockenheim is a good test for the Praga, especially in its new form. You really need to kind of dance on the throttle pedal to keep it nicely in line. So I think we could be in for a really fun race.
Indeed, and with all that said, it's time to say goodbye for tonight. Make sure to check it out tomorrow. And to be updated, keep it on the Discord and stuff. So have a great evening. And until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
That is true.